Hello. Hello, you guys. Black History Month. I think Charmaine is in here. Hello.
Oh, hello. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Just fine, thank you. Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you fine. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, it's great.
I so appreciate you joining because I know it's late where you are. And
It
so
is late.
thank you so much. So
Well, it's a great way to wrap up the day, so thanks for inviting me.
wonderful. So we'll just jump right in. I will not keep you long. I am so thrilled to talk about your amazing novel. It's just, it's the story that I needed to read at this time. So I'm really excited about it.
Well, thank you.
Yes, I'm going to do a quick opening and then I'm going to let you tell the audience about yourself and then we'll jump right in. So you guys, welcome to Literary Wind Down. I'm Jamise. For those of you who are new, I am the bookstagrammer behind Spines and Vines and Diverse Spines. And this is Literary Wind Down, where we have a guest author and we wind down with our favorite cocktail. But unfortunately for me today, I'm not winding down with anything. I'm kind of like post out of a medical procedure, so I'm not winding down with anything. But I'm so thrilled to have Charmaine Wilkerson with me today to talk about her book, Black Cake. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Jamise. It's great to see you. And I'm with you. I'm not drinking anything tonight, but I'm in Italy. We have 2,000 brands of wine here, so you'll have to come over and host an Instagram live from here sometime.
And let me tell you, Rome, I've been twice, and it's one of my favorite places to visit. So absolutely, I'll take you up on that when I come back for sure.
Okay.
So can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself, and then we'll just dive into talking about the novel.
Well, I'm a bit of a late bloomer. I'm a debut novelist after having had careers in news and communication, but I've always wanted to write stories, fictional stories. But it takes a certain amount of concentration and time, and I've gotten around to it now, and I'm thrilled about it. I think that this novel, this first novel, really grew out of the fact that, I've moved around a lot and I come
Mm-hmm.
from a multicultural family. So I think a lot about things like family and identity and shifting concepts of home.
Mm-hmm.
And those ideas are always there in the background. And so when I started to write about these two girls in the Caribbean in the 1960s who were obsessed with the sea and were just sort of different from the other girls and had to be struggling against everyone else's expectations of them, that sort of started to grow. I didn't know what I was writing, but before I knew it, I had a novel. And then I had a present day generation, and this
Mm-hmm.
started to grow. And really, so this is the beginning. This is my debut novel. I'm just getting started.
I mean, and it's wonderful. There's so many layers, multi-generational, and then you take us on a journey. We go to so many different places. But I want to first ask you, tell me what inspired you to write Black Cake.
Well, as I mentioned, I was sort of writing this scene about these two teenagers on the cusp of womanhood, but I'd also written some other scenes that I thought were short stories. And this is really kind of the way in which I write, Shanice. I really just write scenes. I follow a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And in that particular case, the feeling was, what if you are so convinced of who you are and what kind of life you should be living, and everything ahead of you is saying no, everything around you is saying no? How do you go forward? So there were these characters, and I didn't even realize I was writing a novel until I reached a certain point. Then the black cake sort of came into the story, and I think I kind of came full circle and understood where the black cake came from.
Right.
Because of, a few years before I wrote this, a younger relative of mine texted me on my cell phone and asked me for my mother's black cake recipe. She made a wonderful black cake. And that started me thinking about, I was surprised that he'd asked. So it started me thinking about, the things we choose to hold close to our hearts, how we inherit identity, family traditions, cultural identity,
Mm-hmm.
and how food is like a kind of a language. It's a
Yeah.
way, Do you feel that
It's
way
a
too? Is that
connection.
true for
I
you?
like it's. I think it's like a connection. You bond with family, with friends. I love to eat. That's like my favorite pastime. So I think it's you definitely have. I feel like a connection over food. It's very important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And the ingredients are interesting, obviously. And in the case of black cake, they're interesting because black cake is a traditional Caribbean fruit cake,
Hmm.
but it's like an evolved version of the English plum pudding.
Okay.
And so, yeah, and so this cake is a symbol of all those special things like family togetherness, but it's
Yeah.
also a symbol of how things evolve, what happens to cultures.
And that's I have that actually in my notes. So let's go. Let's talk about, because you said the story came to you, and how was this is your first book, so how was your publishing journey, especially now in these times? So how was it for you?
Well, it was all surprising in the sense that when I realized I had a novel, it was a couple of years ago, and I was revising it and working on it, and then we had the pandemic,
Mm.
and I was in Italy, and I thought, I don't know how that's going to go, but fortunately, I was able to work at the computer and work from home, and that was really a blessing. So I just sort of kept doing that and then was fortunate to find a wonderful agent and publisher. And for me, it was both daunting because I had no idea what was going to happen,
Hmm.
and wonderful because I knocked on a couple of doors and someone opened the door and said, "We like this story, let's try."
Oh, that's wonderful. That is wonderful. um so let's talk about the nostalgia, because I think when we're talking about black cake, and I read an article where you said, there's um of course it's connection, but it's also nostalgia of cooking, home cooking. And so the cake in itself, it plays a very dominant role in the book. And for those of you who don't know, we're not going to give away any spoilers, but I will say we've got to talk about the premise, how it comes together, because there's two siblings, Benny and Byron, who come together. They're estranged, but they come together after the passing of their mother. And their mother she's reading to them, or recording, and they discover things about their mom and her past that they did not know. So did I do sum that up really well without giving
That's
any?
really great. That's really great. But we can give away a little bit about the black cake. So
Okay,
the
let's do
bottom
that.
line, yeah. So the bottom line is that you mentioned Byron and Benny. They're from California. They hadn't seen
Hmm.
each other in years. They were once inseparable. So they're really struggling with this estrangement. How did this really happen? A series of misunderstandings, a huge argument. So when their mother dies and they meet in their childhood home, they discover that she's left them this puzzling inheritance, a small black cake. So there's the cake sitting in her freezer. And she's done this on purpose, and she leaves them that voice recording you mentioned, which goes on for hours, in which she talks not only about herself, but a bunch of other people.
Yes.
And Byron and Benny aren't really sure where this is going, but they quickly realize that they've been lied to all of their lives.
Their entire lives. And the whole time while I was reading, I was just thinking, like, at this stage in the game, in my age, if I learned that my parents' lives were completely different or was all a lie, how would I feel? What would I want to know?
Yes, who are you when you
Yes.
lose everything you think you knew? And what they will find out is that some of that happened to their own mother. But
Yeah.
she held on to this recipe for black cake, and they thought it was just this thing she loved to do and make. It was a Caribbean tradition. They didn't realize how deeply she felt about the cake because it was the only thing she really carried with her all her life.
Right.
And and it has its own story. It
It
has its
does.
own story, both in the family and culturally. And
Yes.
so you talk about layers, all of that begins to come out. And it changes, it'll change Byron and Benny's life.
Right. And their lives are definitely very messy, very chaotic, so to speak. Yeah. Um,
Yes.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, no, go ahead.
So let's talk about the the journey that they take, because it's like they have this disruption to their perceived truth, and then they get the actual discovery of the truth. And so, how I want to know how you came up with this narrative and infuse this all in. I mean, there's so many characters, not so many characters, but there's quite a few characters, and you take us on a globe trotting journey. And so, can you talk about that? Because we go to we're in the Caribbean, we're in London, we're in the U.S., we're in Scotland, we're in a lot of places.
Well, that's right. So really, I didn't set out, just as I didn't set out to write a story about a cake, I also did not set out to write a story which would take me to specific places, but I did follow a kind of logic of the imagination, because as the characters grew and as I followed them, it was kind of a journey of discovery. Their lives automatically led to certain places. The one of the girls in the past
Mm-hmm.
ends up moving to the UK. And why? Because that makes sense that someone in the English-speaking Caribbean in the 1960s might then move to the UK.
Yes.
Scotland was part of the UK. And the US, of course, was a place where people would end up from the Caribbean as well. So that brings the connection between the two generations, the
Mm-hmm.
people who lived in the past and their descendants. But I didn't set out to put all of these locations in the story. You know, they just kind of emerged. What I saw at a certain point was like a wheel or a pie chart of a story. And I basically understood that something had happened in the past, that there was this cake, that there were these second chances for some of the characters, that there were disasters for others. And
Yes.
as I wrote, it was sort of like a conversation. If you think about it, Janice, if you and I go to the shopping mall and we see something happen, and then there are two of our neighbors down the street who see the same thing, and let's say we all kind of know what happened. Now each of us starts to speak and tells a different story,
Absolutely.
and we keep circling it. So that's how I see stories. But of course, in reality, on a day-to-day basis, you know, I take notes, I draw diagrams, I did research. I call my research a plausibility check,
Mm-hmm.
because it's because it's not a research-based story; it's an imagination-based
Right.
story, in which I then had to really take a look at the research and say, well, did that really make sense? Could it have happened this way? If I leave that fable-like element in there, will it still hold together? So my path is very much spontaneity, writing a lot of different scenes. I don't always know if it's a short story or a longer thing. And
Okay.
as I got to that point, then it's like wrapping a cord around it, you know, and just continuing to look at the story from different angles.
And let's talk a little bit about the people in the novel, because I want to talk about Miss Bennett, and she her story is so fascinating, and so I don't want to talk too much about her because I definitely don't want to give anything away. But let's talk about her development. And was she the hardest character for you to write?
I think she was a challenge because she seems to be flip-flopping between two kinds of personalities.
Mm-hmm.
She is someone who actually is quite secure in who she is, in the sense that she knows who she is at the core, and yet she's struggling constantly,
Yes.
because she's struggling against the expectations and the stereotypes of other people. She feels rejected by her family. She feels she's disappointed her parents and her brother. And So she flip-flops between having actually a bit of a chip on her shoulder
Mm-hmm.
and being quite secure in knowing what she needs to live a good life.
Right.
And where that leaves her is someone who really needs more care, who needs more recognition, who needs more support.
Yeah, and I think early on when she knew what she needed, it went against what her father had planned for her. And I think that, that holds true with a lot of people in life. You go against what others have planned for you and go for your own dreams. Um, Another thing that looms large in the story is water. I mean, so you're talking about the symbolism of movement. You're moving from place to place, but also water, and swimming played a huge role. There's a lot of imagination in that. And so can you talk a little about that? Because I just, it was very vivid, like the horizon, the water, the swimming, everything. I really enjoyed your writing.
Thank you, thank you. Well, I do love the water. I do love the sea. It
Mm-hmm.
can be calm, it can be turbulent, but I do love it. But I'm not an open water swimmer. But I'm fascinated by people who can face the elements in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Surfers, open water swimmers. I ran marathons for a number of years, and some of the people with whom I trained were triathletes. And sometimes I trained with them in the water. And I knew that that wasn't for me, what they would go through to fling themselves in the water with all those other people around them and go, 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 race. My mother swam in the open water. I never saw her compete, but I know she competed. My father would swim out towards the horizon and just disappear to my child's eye. And so I've always been fascinated by the combination of the beauty of the sea and the comfort the joy that that can bring, and an element of the unknown, an element of danger. And in this story, the two girls on the cusp of womanhood who are stronger than most people on their island and are headed for an unusual destiny, they are obsessed with the sea, and this will determine their destiny, their
Mm-hmm.
relationship with the water. Fast forward to the next generation, and you also see other people
Yes,
who have a
Byron's an
special
oceanographer.
relationship.
Yes.
Byron, right,
Mm-hmm.
Byron's an oceanographer, and he's also a surfer
Yes.
in another part of the world.
And absolutely. Um, you also and there's so many different things, and especially one that stood out to me the most was inheritance. Inherit and memory. There's so many love. And so can you talk a little bit, I mean, courage, the courage that, Covey had, and then the traditions that are passed down. And so can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, memory is a fascinating thing in this story because in Black Cake, the novel, you have Byron and Benny who feel they have certain memories, and then having to hear the truth from their mother and her recording feels like a betrayal.
Yes.
They feel as though they're being stripped of memory, stripped of identity, and robbed of their mother. But as you follow the story, you see that many of the elements that they felt were being taken away from them really are there. But of course, they don't know the half of it. They
Yes.
don't know the half of it. And this is where food plays a wonderful role because it is both a symbol and a reminder of all the beautiful things in the past, and also a symbol of half-told truths, omitted stories,
Yes.
details we don't always like to
I
share.
was thinking that too. We tell ourselves our own story at times. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And so in this story, memory and food and other sensory details like the water, the
Mm-hmm.
currents in the water, they're, in a way, they are handed down either intentionally or they seem to be inherited almost in the DNA.
Yeah. I felt too while they were listening to the recording, even though they felt like things were being stripped away from them, the way that the story evolved, it was as if she was still, although she was telling them the truth, she was actually building them back up, or building them, if they would take the time to listen, building them back, a bridge back to one another, since they
Oh,
were
that's the thing.
estranged.
Yes, yes, excuse me. So as you go forward in the story, one of the things that you're not sure of is whether Byron and Benny can quite find their way back together, because they haven't seen each other in
Mm-hmm.
about 8 years. There was a huge rift in their family and a series of misunderstandings. It was one of those things that took on a life of their own, and they don't really know how they got there. But they were very close. And so that too feels like a great loss. And now they've lost their mother. Their father's already gone. So it's, yes, you're not really sure how well they will come together, but you know that they somehow need to deal with that, or
Right.
they're going to end up alone.
Yes, absolutely. You talked earlier about, you do a lot of imagination and building the story, but you also had some research. And so can you talk about what research? Because I think because you went through different time periods, we have a then, we have a now, we have different locations, and just to get a sense of what was going on in those time periods. So can you talk a little bit about the research?
So, to step back a moment, the story, as we mentioned, is multi-generational. So it goes back and forth primarily between the present day, a couple of years ago, and the 1960s, a bit of the 50s, a bit of the 70s in the Caribbean and the UK. So a lot of the story came out spontaneously from my imagination based on, when we write fiction, we're really writing from a lot of the things we've seen or heard or felt. But as I went along, I really needed to do more research on the Caribbean in the 1960s
Mm-hmm.
and some of the backstory. So there are references to historical events, there are references to the past. For example, we talk about Chinese immigration to the
Yes.
Caribbean, where people came from, from a position of need, needing work. And there isn't a great deal of focus directly on the story of transatlantic slavery trade, the transatlantic slave trade, which
Mm-hmm.
brought people to the Caribbean. But there are references to it through the black cake, which somehow came from the UK, from England, the English plum pudding, to the Caribbean. We know that that comes from a history of colonialism,
Mm-hmm.
of moving from one part of the world to another. And also, I did a bit of research tied into that on sugar,
Yes.
rum, the origins of these foods, because there's a bit of that in the whole black cake story. I also looked into and did some reading, some interesting books on the period in the United Kingdom when people immigrated from the English-speaking Caribbean to the UK. And they immigrated to work to fill a post-war labor shortage after World War II. And you may have heard of the Windrush generation,
I
which
have.
is a name given to, yeah, a name given to a generation of Caribbeans who traveled to the UK because there was a ship called the Windrush in 1948. But essentially, there were various waves. So some of the characters in Black Cake end up in the UK at the
Mm-hmm.
end of the 1960s and in the early 70s. And they experienced certain kinds of certain kinds of discrimination. They also experienced educational opportunities and other things. So I had to do some research into that. So as I went along, but a lot of that came from the fact that I do come from a family where a number of people are Caribbeans or Caribbean British, Caribbean American. And so, as you grow up and you hear the stories, and
Mm-hmm.
that helped to give me some idea of what would be plausible for these characters.
Understood. Yes. Um, can you also, I want to know, in writing the story, and there's multiple characters, and I don't want to say too much, but who was the most, I knew Cubby would be challenging, but who would you say was the most fun and most um pleasurable to write?
Oh, I think because I tend to write in scenes, I do love many aspects of the story. So I loved a lot of the physical interaction with the water and the land and the food. Um, but I think I think it's that I liked her profile. I loved the profile of Etta
Oh,
Pringle.
yes.
Etta Pringle, yeah, without giving away too many
Yeah.
spoilers, Etta Pringle is a world famous distance swimmer.
Hmm.
And she's a role model for a lot of people. And in the present day, she's in her 70s and she's wildly popular. She's an amusing woman. She's a Black woman, and that's unusual. And she is, objectively speaking, one of the strongest people in the world. And so I had fun with her. I had fun with her profile. The fact that she just had managed to live her life quite well, but it was a physically very difficult life because of what she did.
Right.
And again, it was almost as though, well, it was her calling, but it wasn't easy. Yeah, I think I had fun with Etta.
Yeah, I liked Etta as well. So, we have the symbolism of black cake. Did you always know that the title was going to be Black Cake?
I didn't know there would be a cake, but
Oh,
once the cake walked in, I suddenly understood that yes, black cake would have to be in the title.
okay.
I just, the novel had already started developing. There were themes of family, identity, shifting concepts of home, half-told stories,
Hmm.
omitted truths. And so when the cake walked in, and there was some drama around the cake in the past as well as the present, I somehow understood that black cake would become a sort of a links in a chain of events,
And it's
over and
interesting.
over.
It's
Hmm.
interesting because people in the audience are probably thinking the cake has some drama, but you have to read the book to really fully understand. It'll all make sense when you read the book. If you have any questions for Charmaine, please drop them in the question box. So, what did you want readers to take away from reading your debut novel?
Well, I think that I don't want to tell readers ever what to take away.
Hmm.
Each reader will read it. It's like beginning a conversation. So there's that book. You read it and you move on with it and decide how you feel about it. But I will say that I am fascinated by the power which stories have to shape our identities when they are told and when they are concealed or unknown.
Hmm.
And food is part of the language that is used to tell stories.
Yes.
And it helps to shape our identity, but there's something else, and that's love, the relationships we have with people, the love we feel or don't feel. So that was a really long, long answer to your question. I think it's the love, the
Yeah.
power of the story to shape our identities, but ultimately the power of relationships. It's not just what's written on paper. It's not just what you call yourself. It's not what other people see you as. It's not what they tell you to be. Ultimately, the relationships count.
Yeah. But you feel the love throughout the entire story. I mean, you definitely feel the love. I as I was reading, I'm thinking, okay, where are we going? And every time something new came up, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't take anymore. My heart can't take anymore. So let me say congratulations, because you may not be able to talk much about this, but Black Cake is slated to become a Hulu series. Um,
It is.
with Oprah Winfrey's Harpo Films and the creator of The Handmaid's Tale. Congratulations. That is
Thank you.
amazing.
It is wonderful. I'm really excited. I just can't believe that people of such talent and, are getting involved.
I literally, when I read that, I was like, I can totally see this being a series. I would like definitely binge watch it for sure. It would be a great story on the screen. So I always ask my guests, um, we ask about reading and what they're reading. But before I ask you that, I have this thing where I say we're building a time capsule and we're putting books in. And a time capsule is going to be open, 25 years from now. And everyone that's been on recently has given 5 books that they would put into the time capsule. And it can be
Oh,
whatever you want?
Oh my goodness. Well, it won't necessarily be my 5 favorites.
Oh, that's fine. It could be
It won't
whatever.
necessarily. It'll be a variety. Toni Morrison's Beloved has to be in there
Okay.
because it's a story that looks back and looks forward.
Mm-hmm.
It was extremely unconventional and contemporary when it was written. So I just think it's a wonderful work of art.
Okay.
I do think that there has to be a dictionary in the time capsule.
Okay.
Yeah, it has to be a dictionary. I do believe that this is going to come out of left field. Fahrenheit 451
Okay.
by Ray Bradbury, which imagined a future in which people were trying to eliminate books.
Yes. Yeah.
A
Yes.
Handmaid's Tale is another one.
Okay.
The Joy Luck Club.
Yes.
By Amy Tan. I didn't mention that A Handmaid's Tale is by Margaret Atwood.
Mm-hmm.
The Joy Luck Club by Amy Tan, which is a story that, if you read Black Cake, you might enjoy this story. It's from the 1980s. It's mothers and daughters, secrets and
It's a great story.
conflict over generations. Oh, there's so many books. The list could go on and on. But definitely a dictionary, definitely a dystopian tale, definitely a love story of generations. And what do you think? What would your list be?
Oh my gosh, I can't remember what I put mine in early on, but I think I can't remember what they were because it was so long ago. But I know it was The Warmth of Other Suns. I know, for sure, without a doubt. I had in there Native Son, The Fire Next Time, Homegoing, and I don't know what my fifth one was, but I do know those were my 4 for sure.
Oh, those are such wonderful choices, and they're more recent.
Yes, they're more recent. I didn't have
Wonderful.
anything that was, yes. So, I don't think we have. Oh, I have one question in here. Oh, okay, that's a good question. It's place plays such a vivid role in the book, and there's so many places that you speak about. Have you been to all the places that you mention in the book?
I have not been to every place that I mention in the book. No,
Mm-hmm.
I have not been to every place. But it is interesting because when I think of place, I think more of how the person lives in the place and experiences the place, the temperatures, the feel, the sensory experiences, even just going to a chilly northern city or swimming in the warm Caribbean sea. So it's interesting. I tend not to think first of where in terms of a city or a country, but where in terms of how are you living in that place? What is your experience based on what it's like?
Yeah. This is a good question too. You don't have to answer this one. But is there a character that you didn't care for too much in the book?
Oh, meaning I didn't like writing the character or didn't like the person?
They were difficult for you to write.
No, I don't think I felt that way because I just loved the writing.
Yes.
And loved imagining life through other people's eyes. I think that in the revision process, there would be times when I might sit and think, how do I make this really work even better? And that can be a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I liked writing all of these, even the
Henry.
baddies. Even Little Man.
Hold on one second. There's one more. Oh, this is a great question from Reggie. Reads, what has been the most pleasant of surprises that you've encountered since Black Cake came out?
Just the affirmation and the reassurance and the reminder of how many people love books.
Yeah.
How many people love books and stories and are always suggesting things to read and are showing their enthusiasm for stories. That has been the nicest thing, because ultimately I'm just a little girl who loves books, and I'm just delighted to be able to share something that I've written with other people. But it's that constant coming back from other people and their own ideas about what should be read and their own stories related to family and identity and food. That's it. It's just, you know, if people love stories and they're willing to share stories and they're willing to follow stories along an empathic route. What I mean is, when we read stories about people who are not us, maybe they help us to be more open-minded.
Yeah.
Maybe they help us to listen to one another more. I don't know. But the idea that there are so many people out there with that kind of energy surrounding books is it really is a very encouraging thing, especially in our times.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. Before I let you go, I have to know about the cover.
Isn't it beautiful?
It
I
is.
didn't design it,
It
so
is.
I can say it.
It is absolutely stunning. I mean, how did the process come about? Did they give you a bunch of different ones you picked and said yes, or was it completely the publisher?
Well, first there was a conversation, which was interesting, in which people talked about what they loved about the story, what they felt the interesting symbols were, and of course food would be one and water would be another. And then there were some designs shared, but essentially this came out and everyone just loved it. And I gathered that the main designer was Jaya Maselli, and the beauty of the design is one thing, but the messages in the cover are fascinating, and they really do reflect the conversations
Mm-hmm.
that we had around, what do you think the cover could show? What do you think the cover should say?
It's absolutely, it's very, very gorgeous. And I think the cover in the UK has just a spoon on it, correct?
Yes, the cover of the UK has these bold colors with
Mm-hmm.
a spoon on the front and a fork on the back. And that's another strong symbol,
Very.
which is the spoon was kind of the mixing. The fork would be more the eating, but the idea of the preparation. And you see that, and what do you mix up? What do you create?
Mm-hmm. Someone in the comments said they just noticed that a face was on there, and that's the first thing that I saw when I looked at it, was the face. Like that
You
came
know,
out.
oh, sorry, I stepped on you,
No, no,
Janice.
go ahead. No.
No, you know, you say that. It's interesting. It's like a Rorschach test, because some people are saying that, you know, I just noticed there's a face in there, and you noticed right away. Other people see it right away.
Yeah, that is so wonderful. So, are you working on anything to come, if you can share?
Well, I won't share what I'm working on, because
Okay.
I'm working on it, but I am writing, yes, and I'm just delighted that that people are receiving Black Cake so well. It sort of gives me the courage to keep moving forward with my other ideas.
It's so wonderful. I can't wait to read what's next. I can't wait for the series. I can't thank you enough for joining me. It has been such a pleasure. If you guys have not read Black Cake, be sure to read it. You will not regret it. There's a link at the bottom if you need to purchase a copy. But Charmaine, thank you so much. I know it's late for you, but I so appreciate you joining me today.
Thank you, Janice. Wishing you a great recovery. You look
Thank you so
great.
much. I appreciate it.
And looking forward to seeing more of your IG lives.
Okay, thank you so much. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.